Hi, welcome to 6 Feet Apart. I'm your host, Daniel Ignacio Headley, and I'm here with my guest, Effie Pulford. We got her name wrong on the email that went out, so it's an important correction. This is a production of Cloud Bridge, and we're glad you could join us. Today, Effie, we want to talk about something that's really close to you and Ben, your husband, and that is the value of childless couples to the kingdom of God, or to the church.
Yes.
Can you share more about how that became something that really mattered to you in your life?
So actually, for Ben and I, it was something we talked about before we got married and something we prayerfully and intentionally considered at that time, as well as reaffirmed throughout our marriage. So for us, it was an active choice. For some people, it is. For a lot of people, it's something that they kind of just happened into with people going for more advanced degrees. You know, we kind of go later and later before we're at that step. And then for other people, it's a very painful reality that they don't want. But I feel like whatever the reason, this is such a great opportunity to serve in a way that other people in other stages of life don't have.
Right. Now, how have you processed that as a Christian? How has that specifically meant something to you or impacted the way you think?
I think in recognizing that in not having children, that puts me in a place, a unique place to more fully and without distraction serve God in contributing to cultivating his creation and serving in the communities that he's placed us in.
So can you give an example of how that's worked out, in the past or currently? What does that look like?
Sure. So for me, it's being able to really invest in my career. I'm an occupational therapist that works with individuals who have had a stroke or a traumatic brain injury, and it allows me a lot of time to really invest in making sure I stay up on those skills, doing extra trainings, taking advantage of trainings that take me away from home, and being able to spend those late nights at work, those kind of things. As a couple, it really provides opportunities for us to invest in our friends, invest in our neighbors, have more active roles with our nephews, with our friends' kids, any different kinds of relationships that we've been gifted.
So you feel like maybe with this decision, it has made your workplace more of a ministry than maybe it would have been otherwise, do you think? I say that because
yes.
so many of us feel like we go to work and we just are waiting for the moment that we can leave work and then live our lives outside of work. But it's like the work is the thing we have to do so we can eat, but then we have all this other stuff that matters more to us than that. Do you feel like that somehow changes the balance for you?
There are definitely times and days where I'm still watching the clock. I want to leave. I'm ready to go home and enjoy those other parts of my life. But it did allow me to choose and invest in a career that I was passionate about and really felt like used my specific gifts and interests to serve. And so it is, I think I have a little more ownership of it and a little more invested in it than I would if I felt like that it was dividing my attention away from children or other aspects of my life.
Right. Now, we had talked about passages in Scripture that influence this thinking, and I think we landed on 1 Corinthians 12. Is that where we landed? Yes. There's so much to talk about, and so much needs context, and that's something I think we agreed on. But this one seems to be maybe a little more self-explanatory, or with the amount of time we have, needing less explanation. So I'm going to read it.
Okay.
This is from 12, starting verse 4. There are different kinds of gifts, but the same Spirit distributes them. There are different kinds of service, but the same Lord. There are different kinds of working, but in all of them and in everyone, it is the same God at work. Now to each one, the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the common good. To one, there is given through the Spirit a message of wisdom, to another a message of knowledge, by means of the same Spirit. So explain to me a little bit of why that text is meaningful to you.
Yes. I think the biggest frustration for me as being part of a couple without kids is that our society and our church communities often, not intentionally, but often create a culture in which there feels like there's less value on that. And that scripture and that concept that we all have different gifts that contribute to the benefit of the greater whole, I feel like applies really well to our singles, to our marrieds without kids, to our couples raising a family, to our seniors more in that retirement stage of life.
Yeah.
And saying, if we focus more on using the present and being wherever we are and using that as a gift back to God, then we're really, that diversity is creating a better community and allowing for better service and a more full picture of God's love and service to the world.
That was actually one of the things I really loved. You've written a devotional guide, or what would you call it?
Yes, yeah, like a small group kind of study.
Right. And as I looked through that, that's one of the things that stood out to me that I really appreciated, was that the way you're thinking actually has a way to connect with everyone. It's not just for people who are married without kids, but really there's a way in which and that connects with everyone. And as you're talking, I was thinking about Jesus, who encouraged us to live in the now.
Yes.
Right? Don't worry about tomorrow. Today has enough problems of its own. And you know, of course, we're calling the show 6 Feet Apart because we're in a current cultural and global context that is pushing everyone to distance themselves from one another. And so people are experiencing more isolation than maybe we're accustomed to experiencing.
Absolutely.
More time away from folks. And so how does all of that compute to you? Do you think maybe you see that differently from other people?
I think that the isolation piece, that's the perfect word, is as there's a concept in sociology called age grade. And it's this expectation, it more describes like a common stage and age of people within a larger population with specific expectations of them, specific roles. And it's a linear concept, and you move from one to the other. And so an example of that is like, graduating from high school. You're with your peers, that's your age, that's the expectation of the time, that's that life event, that moment. And then you move to that next chapter and that next chapter, and you get married, you have kids. And for folks who stay single for longer, or who get married but don't have kids, or who get married and have kids later in life, now you're not in step with your peers, and it leaves you with that feeling of isolation and even devalued. And so that feeling of isolation, I feel like it's a two-part thing. Our churches often, and our societies often, kind of foster that a little bit in just where we demonstrate where the value is, or even things like our singles groups often cap off at 30. So for our singles who are over 30, they don't have that place of belonging. Or our women's groups are often in the middle of the day during the week. So for our women that are working, that's not available to them. So there's that loss of belonging. But I see the other side of that isolation piece being that we have an individualized expectation that our churches are there to serve us. And so when we don't feel like that's happening, we distance ourselves. And so I feel like it's very important that instead of letting that be our out, or in saying, you didn't meet my need, I'm going to leave, or feeling like we should be rushing to the next stage or be somewhere that we're not, we should take advantage of the uniqueness of those stages, whether it's permanent or temporary, to really gift that time back to God and use the unique opportunities in that time period to serve our communities, to serve our church, to be part of that greater whole and the well-being of that greater whole.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that that idea of living in the moment and taking our moment captive. We have a lot of movies that talk about that, books that tell us to do that. This is an idea that I think we all have a general sense about, but we tend to forget easily. It's one of those things where we just become so focused, I think, on where we are, but it's almost backwards. Like I say, we're focused on where we are, but really the focusing on where we are often, I feel like, causes us to worry. And then when we begin to worry, we begin to think outside of the moment in a way, because we start thinking about how it will be, or what is going to happen, or what I did say, or what it was like, or instead of saying, how can I be faithful right now with this time that I have?
Absolutely.
And why is that so hard to do you think?
I think because no matter how hard we try to recognize that we have an opportunity in the present, we still have our past following us, and we still have that angst of the unknown. Like, what will that mean for the future? Or what if I do this, it means that, or those kind of things. We're very linear, and we're always thinking that next step, that next thing. Yeah. And how will this play into that?
So how do you see, you see your friends or social media, the way people are processing this current COVID context? How do you see your friends with kids thinking differently from the way you and Ben are thinking?
I don't know that I've seen a lot of that. I think I see more the difference between the people that are having to stay home and the people that are still having to work.
Yeah.
As a more obvious difference.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's mostly people in the medical field that are having to work still, and grocery stores.
It's a lot of people. Okay. And I think that really speaks to that idea of how there's so many different parts that keep a community running, and so many different things that contribute to the whole. Is we've got everyone involved in our food process, from the people that are producing the food, packaging the food, delivering the food, the people working in the grocery stores. We've, of course, got everyone in the medical field. We've got people running our gas stations, getting oil to the gas stations. There's a lot of people that are still considered essential. And then even the people that are having to work from home or having to go through this stage of staying at home, not working, they're so essential in isolating and eliminating the spread of this virus. Mm. Like, that's an essential role too.
Do you think your choices have helped you to process this time differently? I'm just trying to put it into context, right? Like,
make it real.
We have a context right now that a lot of people are freaking out about.
I think it does. Even if I just look at my biggest fear right now is bringing this home to my husband, and that having a severe impact on him. And I think that would be that much more amplified if I saw that as bringing that home to not just a husband, but to children as well, or, more people out there. So there's more opportunities, your kids are out here and your husband is out there, and everyone's bringing it back from different places. So I think in just recognizing that piece of worry that comes from being married in all of this, I could see that being significantly amplified with kids as well.
So one of the problems with an interview show is that the interviewer has all the power because I ask the questions.
Yes.
So let's flip it around. What am I not asking, right? Because oftentimes I think you don't know what you don't know, right? So what am I not asking? How am I not even asking the right question? Or what am I not seeing? Or what is it that you would like to say that you think I haven't touched yet?
I think the thing that I would like to talk about is the communication piece in how we interact with people in different stages. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about. Ben will tell you that he has an easier time with this choice than I do, because socially, as a man, he's still asked, what do you do? When we meet someone new, when we're getting to know people, they ask him what he does. They ask me if I have kids. And that's hard. And then the way that we communicate with people, it tends to feel more of like an interrogation. We're good at asking that first question, but then we ask another question and another question. So for example, if someone asks, like Bethany, if she has kids, she can tell them, and then their next question might be, are you going to have another one? Or when are you going to have another one? And then as you guys get older, the question will be, when are you going to have grandchildren? And we're just accelerating that process, where if we started asking questions to really get to know what was meaningful to someone. If we asked questions like, where did you meet God today? Or what brings you joy? And then truly listened to what they said and asked a question based on what they said, not the next social question. But if I said, what'd you have for lunch today? And you told me, I wouldn't say, what are you going to have for lunch tomorrow? I'd say, that sounds really awesome. Like, I didn't think about putting avocados on that, or whatever, pulling your question from what that person revealed in their answer.
Great. So do you think that, okay, so Bethany and I had trouble having kids initially. We wanted kids, it took a long time. And that process was really difficult in waiting. And so what we discovered was over the years that caused us to really not ask that question very often about kids. It just made us sensitive to that,
yes.
Right? And so I assume you probably are sensitive to that when you meet someone. And so what would be, and you kind of gave an idea, but I'm just curious, let's say we just met for the first time,
mm-hmm.
and, what if it was in a workplace, or what if it was at some event where the context is harder to pull from, right? If you meet someone at church, you can talk about the message you just heard or something, right? But what if it's somewhere where it's a little harder to pull an immediate context? How do you think the way you introduce yourself or ask a question would look different from the way it's often asked of you?
There's a book I just started reading, and I forget the name of it. I'd have to get back to you, but that talks about the importance of communication and how we're losing good communication as a society. And the question that he suggests asking is actually about a person's health. And I think that's really fitting right now because it's something that's really on our minds. But he suggests that makes that individual feel like you're invested in their well-being.
So something as simple as, how
are you feeling today? And then pulling from that.
Or, hi, my name is Daniel. Tell me about yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the biggest thing is we so easily jump into wanting to tell our story to relate to whatever was just said. Or it's a little awkward, and so we ask that next kind of scripted question that you would ask, where if we just truly listened to someone when they answered, even if I said, how are you feeling today? And that you really listened to your answer, I would have my next question, because I could pull off of something you revealed in that, something that you asked, and it can go from there.
I think some people listening might be thinking, I actually don't want to talk to people. But I think what you're calling people to is really to be more intentional about
Yes.
communication.
Yeah.
That's really great because I didn't see this conversation going that way. So
Surprised.
I'm glad. And coming back to what I said before, what you helped me to see is that this is something that has helped you to see how everyone, how this experience you've had really affects everyone and how we can all think differently
Yes.
and how we can all communicate differently.
Yes.
That's great. Effie, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was a real pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Join us again next week.